Do you ever wish that you could read faster, but still retain what you read? In this video, I want to talk about 5 practical tips that I learnt when I was at university on how to speed read, which massively increased my reading speed whilst also helping me to retain the information. But let's start with the question of why I think that everyone should learn how to speed read. Recently, I've been rethinking about my reading habits. And this has been prompted by a couple of books where I've just been slightly slower than normal getting through them. But this has led me back to speed reading, which is a skill that I learnt when I was at university and helped me massively with my studies. Putting it back into my routine has immediately made a massive difference to my reading. So I want to start by saying why I think everyone should learn this skill of speed reading. And firstly, it's that speed reading creates momentum. Sometimes we'll come up against books which are slower to read, but if we can implement speed reading, it helps to gain back momentum so we can move through books faster and it doesn't take up so much of our energy. Next is that speed reading reduces reading fatigue. Have you ever felt tired when you're reading? Sometimes this isn't because you're actually tired, but it's because your brain is understimulated. So when we read faster, our brain has to stay more engaged with what we're doing. I like to think of it as that difference between walking and running. So through speed reading, we stay more alert and more focused. Then it's that speed reading helps to cut through the fluff. We can probably all admit there's a lot of non-fiction out there today, which is over-explained. And that's probably because they have to fill more pages to ensure there's a book actually worth selling. But speed reading helps us to extract the core ideas. And if there's something that really interests us, we're free to go back later and explore that point in more detail. And finally, speed reading reduces emotional investment. If you can read a book in days rather than in months, it completely changes your reading experience. It helps you to explore more books, and for me, that's where the joy of reading really begins. So those are my reasons why I feel that everyone should learn how to speed read. But I think overarching all of these points would be the fact that you don't have to speed read all of the time. A bit like myself, speed reading can be a skill which we choose to use when it works for us. So if we want to take a book nice and slowly and really enjoy every moment, we're still free to do that. But moving on, here are the 5 tips that I'd recommend for everyone who's looking to learn how to speed read. For me, the first step towards speed reading was to create a reading self-assessment. What we're trying to do here is find our baseline reading speed, so where we're starting from, and it means that we can track our progress over time, which I think is really interesting, especially as we get to some really quick reading speeds. What I would say is to put a 5-minute timer on and just track how many pages you read over that time. If you want to be really accurate, then you want to do it by word count, but I've always found that actually pages are a pretty good indication of how much we can increase our reading speed. So start there and then track your progress as we go through this. The next step is the one that I personally found the hardest when I was learning how to speed read, and that's to count in your head. We're trying to stop sub-vocalization, which is that inner voice which is talking us through the words we're reading. The problem with that is that we can only go as fast as we can think those words. So by counting as we go across the page, our brain is actually processing the words that we're reading, but without that need to have the inner monologue. So what I tend to do is try and go 1, 2, 3 as I move across the page. But each line, you're using your eyes and the numbers to keep moving you along. It's a hard skill to master, but it's definitely one that is really needed if we want to learn how to speed read. Tip number 3 is to use a reading pacer. Now we're going to need one of these as we get faster at reading because it helps us to focus and stop our eyes drifting around the page. I like to use a stylus just like this one, and what I like about these is I find them great for physical books, but they're also brilliant for Kindle or for iPad because it allows us to turn the page. But a reading pacer can be anything. It could be your finger, it could be a bookmark, or it could just be a pen. But it's about something that's comfortable and helps us to focus as we move down the page. Then we need to get comfortable. Speed reading takes a lot of focus, so it's really important we don't allow a distraction from something like discomfort. That means aiming to sit upright, have really good lighting so we can clearly see what it is we're trying to read, and then finally, to position the book or screen at eye level. That just means we don't get into a bad habit of slouching as we read. So then my final tip on learning how to speed read is to make notes. One of the big things that really helped with my reading retention was making notes after each speed reading session that I completed. What I tried to do was capture down any thoughts or feelings that I had from what I'd just read. What this is really good for is actually activating our active recall. We're training our brain to really engage with what we've read and just note down anything that we felt was important and want to remember for later. Reintroducing speed reading came at the perfect time for me recently. It was just as a couple of books were starting to slow down my reading progress. But using the techniques in this video, I was able to regain momentum and, most importantly, to get back to enjoying what I was reading. And that's why I think that everyone should learn how to speed read. Even if you don't want to use it all the time, it's just a great skill to know how to do. I'd also say that it takes time to master this skill. For me, it was overcoming sub-vocalization and counting in my head as I read down the page. But with time and practice, it does get easier and you do become more accustomed to using these methods. So stick with it and trust me that when you get used to speed reading, you will still be able to read faster and retain more of what you read. I hope you enjoyed this video, so please subscribe to my channel for more content just like this one.